And we are back! I just watched the finale of Season 2 of Rings of Power. I was wondering last episode how they were going to try to tie up like 7 plots in one episode and make them all feel like finale endings. And, let's see how they do. Start with Durin's plot, where his father is basically mining by himself, and they're trying to make him stop because they know some monster is going to be awakened because Disa said so. And then Disa and Durin kiss, but the camera immediately cuts away as if they're cutting something. It was very odd. Usually when someone kisses, you linger on it. The cutaway to the Delve Master's sort of reaction is a little odd. It almost felt like those 2 actors didn't want to kiss or something, and they kind of cut it out. It was very weird. Anyway, so he goes down the shaft and faces his father. Basically is like, I'm gonna cut off your hand if you don't take off the ring. And his father is like, basically, I don't believe you. You don't have the balls to do that. And Durin's like, yeah, you're right, I don't. And he breaks down the rocks, which reveals this incredible wealth of the mountain that is awe-inspiring. I like the shot of it. It did look very... I often talk about scale in these videos, and I did like the way that was shot. And the Balrog shows up. I thought the visuals for the Balrog looked nice. The dwarves unearthing the Balrog this early in the timeline is wild, but sure, whatever. Then the king sacrifices himself, heroically. It would have been nice if we had a couple scenes of him not being adversarial on some level with his son, so that, this relationship and its loss feels something. Every single scene we had with him was like an argument or them making up after an argument. So we don't feel this loss of him when he's taken over by the ring and all of this. Like, we don't feel that loss of who he is because we didn't see how great he was beforehand. Which is a shame, because I think it would have had way more impact if that was the case. Anyway, he decides to attack the Balrog with an axe.
Swords are no more use here.
Good luck with that, buddy. They have the shaft collapse, which is their explanation for why the Balrog stays buried. But wow, just one wall between them and this for thousands of years. Okay, alright. This attack against the Balrog feels like a metal album cover. Wow, okay. Anyway, we cut to the stranger, who has off-screen decided to do the Luke thing of ignoring Yoda and going to save his friends, because we have to do the Empire Strikes Back plotline, except worse. So anyway, he somehow finds the, desert hobbit caves. We have no explanation for how he finds them. He just kind of does. And then it's desolate, but he finds the Dark Wizard here. He must not be Saruman, because it makes literally no sense for him to be Saruman. But damn, are they trying to cram as much Saruman energy as they can into his character. He basically comes in and is like, oh, I've been trying to find you, we're like the same group, and we all came to fight Sauron, yada yada yada, and you convinced me to go do this, and he also offhandedly mentions Manwë, that Manwë told him he would be here, which sort of makes sense, because Gandalf is a servant of Manwë, so Manwë would know that he's coming. But it is odd that the Dark Wizard was talking with Manwë, because if he is a blue wizard, or if he's Sauron, he doesn't actually work for Manwë. I mean, or at least directly. If he's a blue wizard, he'd be Orome, and if Saruman, it's Aule. So, I don't know. I guess it makes sense, sort of. Anyway, he tries to convince him to work with him. The stranger asks about Nori, and he's like, oh yeah, Nori's fine, and then Nori is held at knife point. And he's like, oh, I didn't know these people would do this. In the worst deception I've ever seen. Oh my god. He's like, oh, I didn't know what's happening here. I thought they were trustworthy. And he's like, it's a really bad deception. Like, it doesn't make any sense. He basically backstabs these desert guys and is like, and kills them for threatening Nori, which makes him even more untrustworthy in their eyes because they're merciful hobbits, I guess. And they're like not trusting him, and he basically straight up admits like, oh, we can take Sauron's place. And the stranger is like, no, I'm not doing that. He just rejects him outright, and then he decides to bring down some rocks because he's like, you need to feel the suffering of the world to understand the importance of defeating Sauron. I'm like, are you trying to defeat Sauron? Or are you just trying to replace? And so he throws some rocks down to destroy the hobbit holes, and then Gandalf resists it in a scene that reminds me of... Oh, I don't want to be reminded of that. Oh, no, please no. I don't want to talk about The Last Jedi. We're gonna move on. We cut to a gorgeous shot of the Númenórean tree. Now, because of the sun filtering through, making it look orange, I did mistake this briefly for the linden tree that is in Durin's home. Wires crossed a little bit there, which was probably a misstep, but damn is that gorgeous. I'll acknowledge it. It's very pretty. I liked that shot. Then they've gathered all the faithful in Númenor here in a very awkwardly, like, introduced scene where they're like, why are we here? And Elendil's daughter is like, I don't know. I was just told to summon you all. And then Pharazôn shows up, and he's like, we have discovered that Miriel works for Sauron, and gives this paper to the priest. We have no idea. Okay, so he can make up whatever he wants. I understand that this is just a complete fabrication. But for whatever reason, the plot just chooses not to tell us what that fabrication even is. We have no idea what angle he's pulling here. We don't know what, like, false evidence he's procured. We have no knowledge. And they make no explanation on how he's convincing them. And now he's like, all the faithful are traitors because whatever. It comes out of nowhere. And yes, with absolute power, he could do that, but it's not framed like he has absolute power. There's still like a lot of tension within the city, and the way they have portrayed Pharazôn up until this point is someone who understands politics and understands playing the game and understands affecting people's perceptions, and the way this is done does not showcase any of that. It just feels very just like she is an enemy now, and we will defeat all of you. The story did not build to this point on any level, and so it feels very out of nowhere. So these edicts, like, here's this paper. What does this paper even say? We have no idea. It mentions Sauron. That's all we know. And they put this information on walls, and they're rounding up faithful and doing something. And Elendil's daughter saves him from getting arrested. And so I guess that's like her character arc of, doing something to save her family. Anyway, he escapes, goes to the queen somehow. I don't know how he snuck in here to save her, but he managed to do that off screen, and he's trying to get her to leave with him, and And she... some... dial...
You must travel only by night.
Travel only by day.
okay. So she's like, no, I will stay here because my place is here, and reasons. It's not really clearly explained, and he's kind of confused. And then she's like, oh, look, it's Narsil. That's literally how the conversation goes. They're talking, and then she's just, Narsil, here we go.
Where is mine? If not with you.
It is called Narsil.
And Narsil's just laying there against a chair. It is the strangest introduction to this weapon ever. And he takes it, and the story's like, oh look, it's Narsil. Within the context of this show, we have no understanding of what this sword is and what it means or whatnot. We know, looking back, of like, oh yes, this sword is important because it matters in the Lord of the Rings. But we don't understand why it's important now, in this context. Anyway, we cut to the fall of Eregion, and I gotta talk about this guy. This one archer, he's on screen for 5 seconds, and he is fantastic. I'm sure it's because he's probably not an actor, he's probably a stunt guy, because they gave him a helmet and whatnot, and he does some cool parkour and some cool shooting. He looks so graceful. This is the first character in the entire thing that I immediately was captivated by his elvish grace. I bought that this random guy was like some great elvish archer. His little tiny sequence that takes, I swear to God, like 4 seconds is fantastic. So hats off. I don't know who this is, but whoever you are, you're fantastic. I love you. The grace. The way he moved was beautiful. I loved it. He died immediately, but it was great. Great. If the whole fall of Eregion was just this guy trying to survive on the wall, that would have been way more entertaining than what they showed in last episode. Oh my god. Anyway, and then we cut to... So he died. Well, actually, it's kind of one shot where he dies, and then we pan to Galadriel helping people, and you immediately see the difference between an actor and a stunt guy, because, like, I mean, look at this stance as she's stabbing. I don't want to be mean-spirited about that, because you know, actors are not trained for that sort of thing, and I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone. I'm really just saying that this guy was awesome. Anyway, so she's fighting or something, and she's leading these people out, and they go through, I guess, her secret passage, and then we get this pan up into the rocks. I swear, the layout of the city changes like every episode. This was not the layout of the city before, but it is now, I guess. So they come out of their little secret passage. The orcs are waiting for them, but Galadriel gives herself up to Adar to spare the people, which works, apparently. Then we cut to Sauron torturing Celebrimbor, which amounts to him shooting arrows at him and playing with the arrows in his body, I guess. Far be it for me to criticize Sauron's torture form. I mean, he has a lot more experience, but really? The chief torturer of Morgoth, this is all you could come up with? I mean, buddy, what are you doing? I mean, depending on the version, you tortured Maedhros. Is that why Morgoth hung him on the rocks? It's because you weren't doing a good enough job? This is a weird hang-up, but I know what they're going for is like the simplicity of it, the simplicity of the pain of just he's so good he can just do very simple things that have a huge impact. But this is a guy that can get inside people's heads. This is a guy whose ring that he poured his soul into can give people depression. He should be better at this. He could do anything. An entire arsenal of weapons against the psyche is at this man's disposal, and he's using arrows? I mean, this is not a good use of your skill set. What are you doing? God, I'm disappointed in you, Sauron. Looking at your resume, you should be better than this. You should. What a shame. What a shame. But God, I sound like Morgoth. I sound like Morgoth. Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on from my torture critique. Sauron offhandedly mentions the fall of Gondolin, and that the orcs were frenzying for hours, or that he had heard that, as if he had not been there. And I was going to comment, like, that why would he word it that way, since he probably was there. But I checked, and no, they got that right. He's not in the Fall of Gondolin, because it takes place after the Beren and Luthien chapters. So, presumably, he is either still hiding from Morgoth in shame over losing to a dog, or Morgoth is punishing him for losing to a dog. Either way, he's not one of the lieutenants of Morgoth that's mentioned in the Fall of Gondolin. So no, it's accurate for them to him not know exactly what happened in the Fall of Gondolin. So I stand corrected on that. Good on them. This torture is pointless, because he's trying to find out the location of the rings. This is where the choice for Sauron to know about the elvish rings, to come back and bite them, because this is a horrifying moment for Celebrimbor, but it is also his last act of defiance, is when he's tortured by Sauron. He gives up the location of the 7, he gives up the location of the 9, but he doesn't give up the location of the 3, and Sauron never touches them because of this. But because he knows all about the rings, and the rings that he doesn't give up here, the 9, are ones that he's going to get by the end of this episode, his defiance is pointless. Now, I think what they're trying to do is his last defiance is him either predicting or cursing him in such a way that, like, Frodo's going to end up defeating him. But predicting someone's fall is not the same thing as causing it. Now, it's possible that they're suggesting that he cursed him, and this is why all of this happened, which maybe, I'm not sure I like that, but okay. I feel disappointed, because Celebrimbor is such a cool character that they've utterly wasted in this show. They've made him bumbling and old and tired and an idiot and weak. He's epic. He's an epic figure who fought at the steps of his thing and to the bitter end. We don't get to see any of that. That person is nowhere anywhere in the show. At no point in this show do you feel this is the grandson of Feanor. It's just disappointing. This entire part, like, they're okay. Anyway, but he gets him angry enough to kill him, and he skewers him against the wall. Possibly a reference to what Sauron may very well end up doing to him in season 3, but maybe not. He seems very sad about it. Sauron cries afterwards. You can read different things into that. I just wish that we saw the friendship that he's crying about, because that friendship was almost entirely off screen, which is a shame, because what I really wanted when this show wasn't first announced years ago, the one thing that I wanted was, oh my god, the Celebrimbor Sauron making the rings together would be really interesting. There's so much to talk about there. There's the manipulation, the psychological impact, there's so much, and they wasted it. Of course, the orc that comes in is the orc that has been complaining to Adar about all of his actions for the whole show, and it's clear that he's going to join Sauron's side, even though that doesn't make sense, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We cut to the village that the Southland people are making within the ruins of the Numenor colony. And we have this scene with Isildur and the kid who, its name I'm blanking on. They've only had like 2 scenes together. Whatever. Isildur's leaving, so he hugs him and they talk about like his mother. It's supposed to be a touching scene and there's some things there, but it is what it is. And then of course Astrid shows up and they almost immediately kiss. And she immediately is like, wants to run away with him to Numenor and leave her boyfriend behind. They've known each other for like a day, and half of that was them bickering, and she's stabbed him. She's threatened him with a bladed object twice. But okay, sure. Then Kemen shows up. Still, they're writing him like he's the evilest character in this show, which is great. Okay. He sees Isildur and is like, oh, and I think you're supposed to read it that he's like not really happy to see him. Do you care about his sister or not? Because that was like your main motivation in season 1. If you care about her, you'd be happy that her brother's back, because you know she'll be happy. But in reality, what I think he's thinking is a huge part of the reason why she is on his political side is because of Isildur's presumed death. And now that he's not dead, Kemen might have clocked that she is not going to be on their side anymore. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, he is an asshole, so Isildur sort of assaults him, and then Kemen lets slip that his father's king now, and that Miriel is a traitor, and his father is a wanted fugitive. And he's like, what? And he decides to basically tax these random villagers, even though Muriel promised them aid, and he's just sort of like, whatever, we need wood, get us wood. And that's kind of the last scene of this. This is bizarre, because this feels like the opening of a season. This is like, oh, a new status quo has changed, this guy has come to this place, and now we have to deal with this. This doesn't feel like a finale. This feels like a new thing. This is something you obviously put in the next season, not here. You're starting too much new stuff. Stop adding new stuff. This is the finale. What are you doing? Okay, moving on. Alright, now we go to the orcs bringing Galadriel before Adar, and Adar is facing away like he's hiding his face. Many people in the comments called that he would be healed by Nenya, which he apparently was. So they keep hiding his face, and I started to get scared. I started to get really scared, because a lot of people have been throwing out these rumors in the comments of like, watch him be secretly Celeborn this whole time. And I was like, that's stupid. There's no way that's happening. But they're hiding his face so much that for like a good 2 seconds, I feared. I was like, oh no, they're really going to do it. They're really going to do it. And the relief I felt when she saw him and didn't know who he was, I cannot put into words the joy I felt. I was like, oh my god, thank God. Thank God he's not Celeborn, guys. Oh. It got me scared, though. It did get me scared. But no, he is what he should be. An elf that was twisted by Morgoth. So, somehow, those twisted stuff went away, and I think in this moment he's just an elf now. I think that's the implication here, that just wearing the ring did this. Which is interesting, because that's not really a power that Nenya is ever suggested to have. But okay. So anyway, he suddenly is, like, kind of his entire character changes, which I guess they're implying that it's because the corruption of Morgoth went away, and he's just like very pro, we gotta work together, and I'll take my people and go back to Mordor, and we'll be peaceful, and it will be great, and then gives her the ring back at least I think how they're reading it is that he would rather be and part of the orcs because that's, and he, as their father, is something he earned, and he wants to be known as that, and he's giving this up on purpose, and that's why he's giving it back to her, I think. Okay, but he gives her the ring back, and then some wounded orcs show up, but it's not really wounded orcs. Surprise! They're killing him on the orders of Sauron. Okay, I have thoughts on this. So, based on the way the story has portrayed it, one orc, and presumably others, was unsure about Adar's decisions because it was costing lives of their people to make sure that Sauron is dead. And that they felt that was going a little extreme. And that there presumably was a faction that felt this way, although we are not sure. We only see one who feels this way. Alright? Then that one encounters Sauron, the person that his father is doing all of this to prevent you being enslaved by. And you all know, because a lot of you were there during the speech he gave at the beginning of this season, that Sauron is willing to sacrifice your lives to make this greater goal. He has said so.
Many orcs will die, but out of the chaos, we will forge a new and perfect order.
So, you are going to betray your father, who is sacrificing your lives to prevent enslavement to a guy, to be with the guy that doesn't care about your lives at all.
Many orcs will die.
What? Like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Now, you were like, okay, Sauron got in his head. Well, yeah, of course Sauron got in his head. But you gotta show that. Because the way they have shown the information, you'd have to fill in the blanks to make this work. As the story has portrayed it, it is just I feel like Adar is sacrificing our lives for no reason. I am going to ally with the person who Adar is trying to kill, and that's literally the only reason he's doing this. A person who gave a speech in front of the lot of you that he was willing to sacrifice your lives.
Many orcs will die.
You're going from person who is sacrificing some orc lives to someone who's going to sacrifice as many as it takes. And you should know that. It would have made more sense and been sadder if we didn't have this subplot about dissension with Adar at all. And that when they get close enough to Sauron, and Sauron throws them back under thrall, and then they... But that's not what happens. It doesn't make any sense for all the orcs suddenly to be on his side for a reason. It's like, no. Make it a magical reason, because otherwise it makes no sense. Canonically, he has the power to dominate their will. Just let him do it. And then it would be sadder, because then it would be his children killing him when they don't want to be killing. It's awful. I just... What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay. Okay, alright. Anyway, while they're killing their father, Sauron picks up the crown of Morgoth, and then Adar is dead. Galadriel tries to stab him, and Sauron blocks with the crown of Morgoth, which visually, I'll allow, is pretty cool, but I will have lots of problems with this fight. But we're gonna cut away first to orcs tearing down that statue that I didn't like. It's not a good statue of Feanor, but they're tearing it down. And then they've captured Elrond and Gil-galad, and they're all working for Sauron now. They talk about Sauron, of Lord Sauron. It's like, how are all of them working for him now? The obvious answer is that he dominated their will, but we never see any instance of that happening in this show. That's clearly what happened, but you don't give it went from point A to point C. Give us point B. Let us see that that's what he did. But that's not what we see. They cut that out. Anyway, Elrond's pretty mad because they're about to burn some books. I'm pretty mad. I as someone who, like, my personal berserk button has to do with the destruction of books and libraries, I don't forgive that. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's like the worst thing you can do. So Elrond was appropriately angry here. I appreciated someone having the correct response to watching that kind of knowledge get burned. I was very pissed just thinking about it. Ugh. Just I just hate. This is not a criticism of the show. I just personally, the destruction of libraries are terrible, man. Okay. I'm gonna move on because thinking about the destruction of that knowledge is just gonna make me mad. Not at the show, just mad. And then we cut back to Galadriel, and she fights Sauron in this silly fight. And it's silly for several reasons, one of which it feels pointless. Because we know both of them are fine. Sauron's gonna survive this, and so is Galadriel. There is no stakes to this except that she's, like, trying to protect the Nine Rings and her ring, which we know the outcome for already. There is no tension in this fight at all. So they give it some color by making Sauron fall exactly as Frodo did back in Fellowship. And then, to give it some more spice, I guess, he turns into Halbrand for a minute, and she, like, stops in her tracks. I mean, I don't know why she's so startled by that. I guess she pauses in her fight, even though she knows that's Sauron. It's not even, like, a friend that she knows, it's just another version of Sauron. She must find that version of Sauron very hot. Oh my god, she just, like, completely freezes. And then he turns into her, and they have a fight with two of that actress. And then he turns into Celebrimbor. They don't have any ideas for this fight, because then she falls down, and he kicks away her sword, which I'm gonna comment on. He actually kicks her sword away twice in this fight. Like, not just once, twice. It's like they don't even know what they're just kind of filling time. He stabs her with the crown of Morgoth. And then, like, laments about how he would have made her queen and whatnot. Oh my god. It's okay. Anyway, he asks for the rings, and then he gets the rings, which we knew was gonna happen, which makes Celebrimbor's sacrifice pointless. Pointless. Like, pointless. God, oh my god. Get a shot of the city, and then we go into the city where the dwarves have shown up and are helping out, to the delight of Elrond. And then we see a shot of Arondir. So Arondir is here, and he's fighting just fine. I would like to remind everyone that he got stabbed 10 seconds ago. Last episode, he got stabbed, like, in the chest, and collapsed. And he's moving like he's fine. Like, did the writers forget that they did this? They didn't really have the actor even, like, try to look pained or injured at any point in this. I'm like, he got stabbed! Guys! Did you watch the show that you wrote? Why is he fighting? Why are they carrying him around? He's not one of the leaders. Like, the only reason they're keeping people alive is that these are the leaders of the elves.
Lord Sauron wanted the leaders unharmed.
Arondir's not a leader. He shouldn't be alive to begin with. He shouldn't be alive because he got stabbed, and the orcs shouldn't be keeping him alive because he's not one of the leaders. Goodness! Okay, so moving on, we're back to Galadriel, and he's asking for the ring, or specifically her ring, like, telepathically. He's insisting she give it to him, even though he could have pulled it off her finger at any point while he was stabbing her. but okay. And she pretends to give it to him, but in reality, she throws herself off a cliff. I think they were trying to, like, in their head, they thought this was clever, because it's exactly the same as Elrond. And they're like, oh, well, she didn't want him to do that now, and now he's doing it. Why are elves throwing themselves off cliffs? In this show, it's because they take no fall damage. I mean, look at this fall. This is her. This is her right here. Look at this. That's her. This is the drop. And she is going to be fine. I am not making this up. This is the fall. Elves don't take fall damage in this show. Oh my god. Just why? Anyway, so he's upset about that and immediately stabs the complaining orc that complained this whole show. What a surprise. And see, in the way they've framed the show, in the way they have set this up, the orcs should turn on him, because the whole point was to save orc lives, right? But that's not going to happen. Because they needed a scene where he magically took control of them. But they don't have that scene. So the orcs following him is no longer going to make sense because they have not explained what power he has over them. Right? Okay. So anyway, we go to her and notice that she is injured because she got stabbed by the crown of Morgoth, but she is not injured from the fall. She is fine from the fall. It is crazy. Like she's fine. Anyway, so Gil-galad brings out the ring of Vilya, the Ring of Water, which is the only of these rings that people have theorized has healing powers. So I was like, oh, we're gonna see the healing powers of Vilya. And Gil-galad, he starts praying over her body, trying to do some like healing stuff. He's like talks about the light of the Elder King, which is a reference to Manwë. It's interesting that he's calling upon Manwë when Este is the healing Vala. I know you know more Valar, because you referenced Yavanna last season, so I know they know the list. A little odd. I mean, I guess you can call upon Manwë too, but it was an opportunity to name drop a different one. Then Elrond finds the Nenya on the ground and gets over his qualms about the ring to save Galadriel, because he realizes he needs to use the ring to save Galadriel. Again, Nenya, there's been no evidence in the text that Nenya has healing powers, so it's interesting that the show is kind of almost framing it that Nenya is the one that has healing powers and not Vilya, which is odd. Whatever, okay. And Elrond puts on the ring. I'm sure they find that amusing, because that's not the ring he ends up with. And then we cut to Nori, who's upset that she helped cause the destruction of this village, and you'll notice this staff here that will be important in a second, and she's like, we need to fix this, and Poppy is like, I don't think you can, and sometimes things can't be fixed. And as she does a speech that kind of runs in circles but basically means that some things can't be fixed, we get a shot of the Dwarf King funeral, which would be sadder if we had any scene with him that wasn't adversarial. Shot of Elrond looking at the ruins of Eregion, and Isildur going back to Numenor, leaving behind Astrid, who he can't take. I didn't even mention this. He can't take her because Kemen says so. And so this whole love story they have created out of nowhere, is it going anywhere? Like, is he gonna come back? I'm just like, what was the point of this? Is what I'm gonna, like, why did we add these characters? There was a lot of screen time devoted to this. What was the point of Isildur staying behind? if this is all that happened to him was like he met this girl, he fought some spiders, and he saw an ent. Not much happened. Like what was the point of this? I don't know. We get a shot of the queen like on trial for something. We still don't actually know like what her trumped up charges are. Who knows? Because the show doesn't have any interest in explaining what they are. Anyway, we get a shot of Elendil leaving the city, which is the same as that shot, that vision he had of himself walking away. I remember I said that was a seal door, but I was wrong. That was Elendil in the vision. And we now get that image. And as Poppy talks about like making something new, we get this shot of Sauron holding the Hammer of Feanor. Now, what I think this might imply is he might end up making the ring, the One Ring with the Hammer of Feanor. God, I hope so. Just because imagining that that seems like something that would piss Feanor off, and that's hilarious. Oh my god, that would annoy him so much. Yeah, there's a comedy to that I kind of appreciate. Then we cut back to... shoot. My movie starts in 10 minutes. I gotta drive to the movie theater now. Alright, I'm back. Where were we?
Thank you kindly, Grandelf.
Oh yeah, Gandalf. Okay. And he is definitely Gandalf now. These desert hobbits call him Grandelf.
Goodbye, Grandelf.
Oh my god. And if obviously he likes the sound of that. Oh my god. Putting aside the canon fact that Gandalf isn't his real name, and it's one of the many names that he has, that really shouldn't be the focus of it or whatnot. The origin of Gandalf being Grandelf, Nori, and I'm still not gonna call him Gandalf till they name drop it. The stranger, they have a heart-to-heart, and she decides that she's gonna like help the desert hobbits migrate, and she's gonna go with them, and they're gonna separate. I keep bringing this question up, but what was the point of this? Why did she go with him? Like, from a narrative perspective, they did not help each other on any level in each other's storylines. They were like, we're gonna go on this journey together, and then they were separated. They did their own thing. He saved her life, but she was in danger because of him to begin with. There was no... When characters go on a journey together, from a narrative perspective, it should feel meaningful. That they work together and they do this but nothing happened with them. There was no reason for her to come with him. There was no reason for any of that. I mean, she finds this desert people that she's going to put on migration, but from a narrative perspective, she could have been doing that with her own people. How did she grow as a person? And now they're separating. Okay, just like, what was the point of this plot? What was the point of this? Nothing, from a character perspective, happened. They go off east, they separate, she finds some more hobbits, they endanger the hobbits and their home gets destroyed, and she helps them migrate. That's her story. And so now she's walking off. And then his story is finding a staff. A staff! Okay, fine. And then he goes back to Tom Bombadil, and he's like, it was a test the whole time. The whole point is to pick friendship and not power. I'm like, okay, fine, but that's not how Tom Bombadil framed it. It wasn't a power versus friendship. It was friendship versus saving the world. That's not how he framed it. So it's like, oh, you passed the test. It's not the test that you put forward. He interpreted your test correctly, but that's not what you put forward. You put forward are you willing to risk the rest of the world to save these two people? It wasn't about power. It was never about power. I understand what they're going for, but it's I'm not feeling it. Not feeling it. Just this use of Tom Bombadil is driving me crazy. And then he finally says, it's like, my name is Gandalf, or basically, and I swear the disappointment I feel. I was so hoping he was a blue wizard. I know I was delusional for like 2 seasons, hoping, but no, he's Gandalf, and it's silly. And the reveal is silly.
It finds him like his name.
Gandalf.
I am Gandalf! Roll credits! Oh, okay. And then they sing together. And if that was all we had seen of Tom Bombadil, they sit together by a fire and he sings. Like, literally nothing else, just that. That would have been a better interpretation of Tom Bombadil than everything else we got. Them singing together, the context completely surrounding it makes no sense. But the idea of Gandalf and him singing together, that's fine. Just, that literally is the only thing that feels vaguely Tom Bombadil to me. Everything else was Yoda. Tom Bombadil should not be Yoda. I'm sorry. He shouldn't be. So, and then we get a shot of not Saruman looking menacingly at the stars, but he's probably not Saruman. Then we get our final scene with Durin and his wife and Delve Master, where they start talking about all this, like, dwarven politics, and that Durin's brother might try to make a play for the throne, and, like, all these things, all of which should be in the next season, and will be in the next season, but why are you setting this up now? This is the finale, guys. I don't know why I need to explain this. Set this up in the first episode of season 3. You just end their stuff with the funeral of Durin. You don't need to add all these little hooks. Just no. All this precious screen time could go to a plot that matters right now. This doesn't matter right now. This is season 3 stuff. Just what are you doing? No, stop. Okay. And there's, of course, the fact that the ring was left by the king. So there's, obviously in season 3, there's going to be this play of Disa's like, don't try on the ring, and he's going to be like, but I probably need to, or stuff. But that's season 3 stuff. Then we cut to Galadriel, and they even gave her a shirt to make her look like Frodo when he's waking up from Rivendell, because they so wanted to capture that energy. And they even have Gil-galad like sitting next to her and like say some offhand stuff to make it feel like Gandalf and Frodo. But I'm pretty sure they actually are in what will become Rivendell. If I'm not crazy, I think this is what this is supposed to be. It's pretty. I think it's pretty. And then Elrond shows up with the ring, and he very gently puts it on her finger. They're never gonna mention that kiss again, because the writers just wanted to do it for shock value. That was all the reason. It's not, from a story perspective, I don't believe it's ever gonna come up again. But they're throwing that energy around still with this. At least I feel that. Like, who are they pandering to? I looked it up because I was curious. I went on to AO3 and I was like, how many fics tagged under Elrond and Galadriel romance are there? And I found 5, 3 of which were written like a couple days ago. And of the remaining 2, 1 was a harem fic, so it doesn't count. And so there was only 1 fic. There was only 1 fan fiction in the whole of AO3 that was about Galadriel and Elrond in a romantic context. So I guess this show was for you, man, but there is no... there is no Galadriel Elrond shippers that they're pandering to. That community doesn't exist. So they're not pandering to the shippers. Well, I guess they did pander a little bit to the shippers, considering that Sauron skewered Celebrimbor this episode. But anyway, I want to talk about him giving her the ring, which I want to break out, like, try to run down the journey of this ring this season. The rings were made, Elrond stole them, gave him the Círdan, then, like, it fell out of Círdan's thing, and Galadriel got a hold of it, then Galadriel has it, and then she gives it to Elrond, and then Elrond loses it to Adar, and then Adar gives it back to Galadriel, and then Galadriel drops it, Elrond picks it up, and now Elrond's giving it back to Galadriel. And half of what I just said happened in one day. Adar took it from Elrond, and then Adar gave it to Galadriel, like, within an hour. Like, all his entire thing, he just gave it away back to her, and then she loses it, and it comes back to Elrond, and Elrond gives it to her. It's just, it feels so convoluted. I guess they really like shots of people giving the rings to Galadriel? Is that appealing? I don't know, but he gets the ring to her, and then they're, like, deciding, oh, and Arondir is here. I should point that out, and they have not mentioned at all that he got stabbed, still. Like, there's no, like, offhand thing of he got healed by the ring, or nothing. He Anyway, so they're trying to decide, like, oh, should we fall back or fight? We're kind of weak, and of course Galadriel's advice, which she frames it as like we should follow Celebrimbor's advice, and they don't say it. Galad, like, unsheaths his sword on the hill, so the implication is like we're gonna fight and take the fight to him, which of course was Galadriel's advice. That's been her advice this entire show. So I don't know what else they were expecting. But anyway, they stand on this cliff, do a very, like, Dragon Age Inquisition moment. And the final shot of the show is what I think is where Rivendell's gonna be, and them looking at a very small group of elves. Their army got massacred. Kind of off screen. Like, there was an army, and then there wasn't. Like, the orcs annihilated them, but that we don't really see that happening. But that happened last episode, sort of. Anyway, so there's a couple people there, and this very pretty shot. I do like this shot. It is very pretty. And then we cut to black. I think, on a whole, this specific episode was a mess, in the sense that it just, besides the Sauron stuff, nothing else felt very end of season worthy. Everything felt very rushed. I mean, if you break down what actually happened this season,